Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the session 2, Climate Change and Strategies for Disaster Prevention. The chairperson of this session is distinguished Professor Zhou Tianying of Fengjia University. Please welcome Professor Zhou.
Okay, thank you. For the distinguished guests from Taiwan, from Philippines, from Australia, from Vietnam, good morning. I'm Tianying Zhou from Fengjia University. I'm the director of the GIS Research Center inside the Fengjia University. In this session, there will be 4 speakers. I think we just followed the rule by the first session, so please have all the speakers. When they finish their speech, then we can have a mutual discussion period to save the time span. So the first speaker came from National Tsinghua University, the Professor Zhang Yi. He's from the Department of Hydraulic and Ocean Engineering and also the Institute of Ocean Technology and Marine Affairs. So he's going to talk about the application of GIS for disaster prevention under the climate change. It's also a case study in the coastal zone of Tainan City in Taiwan. Let's welcome the Professor Zhang Yi.
Thank you. Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today I'm going to talk about disaster prevention, but I give the study case in the coastal area of Tainan. Okay, so when we talking about the climate change, one of the important sectors is the sea level rise. So from the NOAA satellite data, is clearly shows the sea level increase from 1993 to nowadays, and it's about 86 millimeter. Okay, so from the global sea level has been rising to this rate, and also the record of a tidal gauge also shows the Houston's have a sea level rise up to the 20 centimeter in the last 100 years. And how about the situation in Taiwan? I download the satellite data of sea surface height, and I select the 3 areas around West Taiwan. One is in the central part, and the southwest, and the Chinese part. All the regions shows the increasing trends, and with the rising rate about 2.2 to 2.6 millimeter per year. So it means in the following 100 years, the sea level will rise to up 24 centimeters. So this is quite similar to the study of Houston. And when sea level rise, what will happen to our coast? The evidence shows that sea level rise will enhance the storm surges because the sea level rise will give us stronger wave. And the other hand is the sea level rise will push the salt water inside and move the fresh water up to the land surface. So this situation will reduce in the drainage capacity of river discharge. So the flow from the land will to form a backflow from the seawater back to the land. So cause the coastal flooding events. Okay. So how to implement the disaster prevention programs in the coastal areas? I give 3 ideas. First is to understand the process of a coastal change, and second is to integrate all the useful informations and by GIS systems, and then to propose an appropriate disaster prevention strategy because we have satellite data or the scientific data, and then we can have GIS tools to help make decisions. Okay, so for point 1, how to understand the process of a coastal change. I show you the historical map from 18th centuries to nowadays, and the red lines indicated the coastline positions in 2015, and this map is about 300 years ago. So the Zhengwen River is not in the southward, but in the north, and then the Zhengwen River course changed through times because the heavy rainfall happened in 200 years ago. So the coastline getting silted. So this is the history of the Tainan city. But from 1974 to 2015, the coastline getting eroded. So this part have been 1 kilometer moved back to the land. And this is evidence that in 250 years ago, Tainan city is just like the Venice in Italy, because people can take a boat around the city. But nowadays, you have to work. So the other thing is the sand barriers in the Chigu Lagoon. We have a very big lagoon here, but this photo is in 1947. And this is the sand barriers here. But nowadays, the lines are getting retreat back to the land. And I show you the UAV photos that we have a stage for sightseeing. And 4 years ago, I just stand here to give a talk, and there are a lot of vegetation around the stage. But this is in last year and this year. So the erosion is getting faster. And because we have a satellite images and we can have a GIS tools, so we can digitize the coastline in different years and give profiles to calculate the change rate of coastline. So I show you here is the coastline change with a different rate. This part shows the erosion rate about 10 meters per year, and this part is almost 13 meters per year. Only the southern part of Tainan city with accumulations with 2.7 meters per year. And the color pages are the historical historical data of flooding regions. This is provided by our government, the TGO's the website. So when we integrate the historical map and the coastline areas, it seems to be that all the flooding areas are frequently happened in a erosion coast. So this part may shows the information that how to deal with the flooding, but we have to consider the coastline change together. Why we talking about the coastline will enhance the flooding in coast? That's because the lagoon in South Taiwan have a problem that when sea level rise or the elevation of sand barrier getting down, the overwash will frequently happen. So the sand barriers will move to the upstream. So the sea level, the water level of lagoon will be higher. So when we have a rainfall down from the land side, but the water cannot discharge to the ocean. So the backflow will cause the flooding event in the villages. So this is a Longshan Sequ. It's very close to the Chigu Lagoon. So it's frequently happened every year. So the government spent a lot of money to deal with the fraud preventions. But in this case, this is in 2016. Even we have a lot of pumping machines here, but the water still come back. That's because we have a maximum of the sea level height about 1.7 meter in the lagoon. So the discharge was blocked and go back to the land. So the areas is very important because all the flooding areas covered a lot of landmarks, just like elementary school, hospitals, and fire stations. So when we combine the flooding areas and all the landmarks, we can use in the GIS tools to select the attribute table to figure out where is the important areas and where it can be used for disaster preventions. So I give a simple idea here. When we have all the data with a flooding event, just like we have a historical flooding map, we can put into the GIS. And we have buildings, institutions, and we can have a disaster SOP. So all of things can combine together, and we can give an idea how to deal with it. Just like if we have a fraud event in our home, and how can we do? First, we have to think the priorities. Who or what should be first one to be protected? And then how, who can have the enough support, just like the fire stations and the police, they can help the people to retreat. And then the capacities, where should we go? And where can we get a lot of resource to help people? So this is a simple stages that help the decision makings. But what I'm talking about, disaster prevention is in a short case, but for the long-term plan for the disaster prevention, we have to think more, because all the coast areas getting eroded and our west part is disappearing. So the point is, because we have a lot of a dam and reservoirs along the upstream, so we need water, but the silt also blocked in the upstream. Then the silt cannot go back, go through the river and further to the ocean. So the erosion happened. And this is not only happening in our country. I give the case in 2014 that in Greece. In Greece, they have two big dams completed in 1987 and 1999. Before the dam completed, a lot of areas is in the estuaries of a silted part. But after that, the silted part eroded. And also, you can see the shoreline have very great erosion areas in here. So this is really common things in the coastal areas. But how to deal with that? I have to say that our government doing something good to help both the reservoirs and the coastline. Just like an example here, the government created a Zhengwen River with a tunnel, which tunnel will release the silted from the reservoir back to the river. And this is the inside view of the tunnel with a 9-meter high and 10 kilometer long. And here I will show you how the tunnel works. Okay, so the video shows that our government tried to save the reservoir and keep the silt through the river to the coastal areas. And the other thing is that the coastal area have a lot of harbors, and the harbor dikes have a jetty effect. So the second thing is how to deal with the jetty effect, that by using a small constructions to bypassing the sand, just like this one. This is an area in the Europe that the coastline have a harbor here, but then the coastline like dislocations, like your broken arms. So this is very important things to make a balance of sediment transportation in the coastal areas. And the third thing is how to deal with our coast. I'll give an idea about the delayed urbanization plan, because just like United States in the Orient, the heavy flooding events destroyed these countries. So people thinking how to make a good decisions, like we don't destroy our land a lot. I give another idea here. This is a Jinmen areas, my hometown, because people want to create a lot of place for the tourism, so we destroyed all the wetland. And because people want to use in the coastal area for the human tourism, so the horse crab have to move. So is that a real thing or really important for people? I have to say that we have to consider more that sea level will continue to rise in this century. So this is a key issue for the further design in prevention constructions. And the final point is we have to do it friendly to the coast, because to prevent, to protect our coast is the only way to protect ourselves in the future. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Professor Zhang Yi. I think the climate change has very high impact for the coastal zone, especially in Taiwan. So for next speaker, let's welcome the Director Liu Guochen from Central Weather Bureau in Taiwan. He's talking about the application of ensemble the quantitative precipitation forecast in Taiwan. Let's welcome the Director Liu.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, all distinguished guests and all of you. And I am Director of Forecast Center in Central Weather Bureau. So all the hazard you mentioned in the morning, I think is about weather. And next I will introduce how the CWB issue the warning, especially the QPF. What the means of QPF is a quantitative precipitation forecast. I think it's very important in Taiwan, especially under the climate change background. And how's the situation of climate change in Taiwan? Let's take a look on the temperature rising trend. In the up chart shows the temperature rising around Taiwan, and the below is the global mean. And you can find that Taiwan during the last 100 years, the temperature rising 1.3 Celsius, and almost doubled of the global mean. And that recent 10 years, you can find that the trend is getting more stronger, and it about 0.2 degrees C in a decade. So for the next 100 years, about the trend, follow the trend, you are going up to maybe 2 degrees C. So this is the trend, but maybe all the people feel it's get hot, okay? And hot, we can check the hot event in Taiwan. For example, I checked the trend of Taipei. The down below shows the highest temperature greater than 37 Celsius in Taipei. And we counted from the past 60 years, you can see the number of the high temperature is rising. The temperature event is rising. For last year, I think the number of the extremely hot day is about 17 days. It's about in a month, 1 week, the temperature greater than 37 Celsius. Yeah. And this year, CWB tried to issue a so-called storm hot surge advisory, and we find the whole summer, every day, CWB has to issue this kind of advisory because there's a last press in Taiwan, especially in the very local press. They have a day maybe temperature greater than 36, so CWB have to issue this kind of advisory to the public. And we re-examined the weather situation, especially for the subtropical high. As you think in the summertime, when the subtropical high pressure around Taiwan, the weather, the temperature was rising rapidly. So if you analyze the subtropical high from 1970s to 1210, you can see the domain of the subtropical high is expanding very large. So it's the hot event is not because the local phenomena, the high island effect. Not only that, it's the phenomena from the globally. Okay, that's the event of the highest temperature rising situation. And how about the rain precipitation event? Okay, this is a trend of the days, a rain day. If we define a day, they have a greater than 0.1 millimeter precipitation, we'll define it's a rain day. And we find that during the last century to here, you can see the rain day is decreased. And almost in the past 30 years, it's almost 6-day decrease in the decade. Okay, so not only this kind of situation, if you see if a day of drizzle, okay, you can see the drizzle they also decrease very much. And that means if the condition of the rain amount in a year is not changed much, it was showing that the raining day will be more concentrated. All the extremely heavy rain day will concentrate to several days. So we calculate the heavy rain day. We define if a day rain accumulation is larger than 50 millimeter. And we found that during the past 30 years, we were 1.36 days increase in a decade. That means the rainy day, heavy rain day will increase rapidly. So as I remember, as I was a forecaster, I went to Central Weather Bureau. I met a tremendous typhoon named Hope, which invaded Taiwan and mudslide, very tremendous, very massive condition on Ali Mountain. And I remember that day, the total rain amount in Ali Mountain is about 2,000 millimeter. But 9 years ago, a typhoon, Morak, approaching Taiwan. At this event, the rain amount total in this situation is greater than 3,000 millimeter. So what does that mean? Okay, the extreme weather is more frequently and the intensity may be more intenseful. Okay, so this diagram shows that before the Morak affect Taiwan, there's a long days, there's not a rain event. So before Morak, we can see there has many lanes so drier, and after Morak, there's a massive landslide and flooding around Taiwan. And for average in Taiwan, in the rain season, we can define it as kind of the time series of the rain situation. This is from January to December. You can see there's two peaks around Taiwan. They have a strong precipitation. One is May season. The other is typhoon season. All the periods cover from May to September. So it's a long period of rain season in Taiwan. And the extreme event might occur during this period of time. So we cannot expect 1 year before that we know when or where the precipitation will occur. And so we have to prepare some skillful technique to help the CWB to enhance their early warning system. So you know the early warning system include the disaster risk knowledge, and management and forecast, and then dissemination, this information and communication, and emergency plan, something like that. And what the CWB do is to monitor and forecast the weather event to the public. So to making a scientific base or generating accurate and timely forecast is the duty in Central Bureau. At this time, I was sure how the CWB to perform high resolution ensemble QPF to you. And before that, we have to have a good monitor system for the precipitation. In Taiwan, currently we have more than 1,000 rain gauge around Taiwan, which can monitor the rain situation, and all the rain information we're sending to CWB website, so all the people can get the information in 10 minutes, I think. Okay. And besides that, we have 10 operational radar around Taiwan, which have 4 in S-band in CWB and 3 from Air Force, and 1 is from CAA. And currently, we have 2 water radar is working in Central and South. And later of the next year, we will have another 3 C-band radar working. I think those kinds of information will help our customer to use the real-time precipitation monitoring. And this kind of base, we have to verify and calibrate the rain situation. But how does CWB issue the precipitation and heavy rain warning? And currently, we use the high-resolution prediction system. We so-called WOLF model. It's a weather and research forecast system. And those domain resolution is very important. Currently, we use 2 nested domain. One is 15 kilometer. The fine resolution is 3 kilometer. And the 52 levels, and every day they runs 4 times. And each time they will generate, I think, about 20 ensemble member for the forecaster and for the public. And the high-resolution WOLF model can provide accurate the captured or inference Taiwan topography or typhoon circulation, and also benefits to describe the heavy rainfall. And so the model can handle well the Taiwan compressed topography. And so the local effect of precipitation, it can simulate well. And how does CW work on the high-resolution model? At first, we need a global forecast system to forecast the global weather condition, and then we do this kind of model downscaling to the small area. And during this process, the CW can get the rain map around the island in 80 member a day. The time resolution may be 1 hour, and spatial resolution is about 3 kilometers. And we put in all this information to, it's called a data bank called ETQPF. And then once the tropical cyclone approaching Taiwan, and the model can simulate in different situation. For example, typhoon occur in the eastern Taiwan, they may be in different member can predict a different track. Okay, and those track ensemble can show the uncertainty of the track. And because of every member can generate a difference with a map, a rain map, so the forecaster can select this kind of the group to combine different kinds of the information about the QPF. And so this is an example. If a typhoon, the forecaster issue, the track will move across Taiwan, and we can sampling in the different circle to define the location of the tropical cyclone. And each dot you can map into the each map. And all this information you can combine as a man map, which was generated by the different dot of the tropical cyclone location, and map into a rain map and to do kind of a mean or standard deviation or probabilistic QPF product, yeah, something like this. Okay, we can take this academic, the advantage of information techniques to the spatial location of the rain about the time series or something like that. And besides, the forecaster can use this system to tell our user if the track of the tropical cyclone have a different trend. Okay, the forecaster can use this kind of product to generate, for example, this case, if we expect the typhoon will move far Taiwan or more close Taiwan, you can use this kind of technique to generate the rain map in different kind of situation, which will help a decision maker to evaluate the risk condition. Okay, this is the example of the tropical cyclone mantle, which will approach Taiwan and land in Taiwan. This is the observation of the typhoon map. And this is the simulation from the numerical model. So basically, the feature is quite similar. And this is another case. So even in 3-hour forecast, the results also can show the quite similar pattern. And in the QPF, we have brief summary. They have strengths that if the forecast track of tropical cyclone is accurate, then we can perform a good QPF to the public. But still, we have some uncertainty for the uncertainty of the track forecast. I think the weakness is mostly is very expensive. It needs powerful computing support. In Central Weather Bureau, we purchased a supercomputer in about 5 years. It's about cost $15 million US. So yeah, it's quite expensive. 2 months ago, there was a high impact rain event around Taiwan, 23rd August. And in this condition, a tropical depression landing and approaching to Taiwan. In this situation, we found that while the tropical depression passing through Taiwan, it leaves a lot of the heavy rainfall according to the time series of the precipitation. And they have a kind of rainstorm, the precipitation more than 100 millimeter an hour. I think this kind of situation is hard to predict, but the trend of the precipitation can capture very well. During this period in Central Weather Bureau, in about 21st, we announced the low pressure area will affect Taiwan. And during the warning period, we issued lots of the torrential rain warning, and strong wind. And before the D-Day we called, yeah, in the previous day, we have a special report for the Central Emergency Operation Center to announce that it might be heavy rain in the next day. And as we compare the high resolution model performance to the global model from the United States, is a very good model. We can show that the skill score in the CW, we can say 2 days ago, you can depict the precipitation larger than 200 millimeter. I think it's about a 12-hour lead the global model in the United States. So because we use this kind of the technique, we can improve the early warning system forecasting and to help the decision maker to make appropriate decision. Okay, I think the time is limit. I just stop it here. Thank you.
Okay, thank for Director Liu. Thank you. I think that climate change has very high impact, especially for the kind of precipitation. It's really hard to forecast, really hard to predict. So I think the Central Bureau in Taiwan is doing a very good job. The third speaker of this session is Mr. Trombanken. I'm sorry if I mispronounce. Yes, yeah, from Vietnam. He's acting head of Tropical Meteorology and Typhoon Division in Vietnam Institute of Meteorology, Hydrology, and Climate Change. So he's going to talk about the climate change scenario for Vietnam and future projection. So let's welcome Mr. Kim.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today I'm very honored to be here to talk about climate change in Vietnam. My presentation today, on behalf of IMHAN, this climate change and sea level scenario for Vietnam was I see by Monterey, but implemented by my institute, Vietnam Institute for Meteorology, Hydrology, and Climate Change. My talk today have for the past. First one, I would like to brief introduction of IMHAN, and second one, observe change in climate in Vietnam. Third one, climate change projection for Vietnam, and last one, some remarks. Here our institute, my institute was established in 1977, and until 2003, we changed the name the Vietnam Institute of Meteorology, Hydrology, and Environment, as known as IMHAN. And the last one, 2015, we changed the name again, become a Vietnam Institute of Meteorology, Hydrology, and Climate Change. Here is organization diagram with IMHAN. I'm from Center for Meteorology and Climatology. I would like to correct my position. My position is acting head of tropical meteorology and typhoon division, not acting head of IMHAN. Acting head in a very high position. Maybe some miss. Or something wrong to the data transferring or something like this. I'm very sorry for about this. I'm from here. Our institute for 5 pillars. The first one we focus on meteorology, climatology, and agrometeorology. Second one we focus on research on hydrology, water resource, and marine hydrology. The next one is environment. And we also very focus on hot topic, climate change and study for Vietnam. And we also provide the service consultant applying the transferring technology, climate service or weather service for community. And last one, we also have to function to like the university. We can have only PhD program. This is the history of the climate change projection published by Monterey, implemented by IMHAN. The first one we on the 2009. The first one we based on the symmetry AR4 and use statistical downscaling. The second one in 2012, we combine use the magic chain gain and prices for dynamical downscaling. The last one in 2016. We use totally dynamic downscaling with the 16 ASEAN members from CMIP-5 AR5 model, recommended by IPCC. Here is the collaboration and present status. The first one is the Hanoi University of Science to provide the program for meteorology, and the second National Hydromet Administrative, and this is my institute, and we have two very tight collaboration under the Ministry of Natural Resource and Environment. And here I would like to move to observation in Vietnam. Here Vietnam located in very long from the 8 to 22 degrees north, and we have a very complicated topography and to meeting point of the many some larger circulation. For example, it's is summer monsoon, West North Pacific summer monsoon, and also many things. Here is the brief about the Vietnam Hydromet Station Network. We have around in compared to Taiwan, it's very cold. In Taiwan, very dense. Many. We are here. It change in temperature over about 50 years ago. Compared to the from the 1958 to 2014, for average temperature will increase 0.62 degree for whole country, and in particular, it's increased 42 increase only for last 30 years. About the change in total rainfall. Total rainfall in for the northern Vietnam, where the cold color is mean so the decrease in the north, and so the increase in the south Vietnam, and also in the increase more in the south of Vietnam here most here. And also here, the Red River or North River have a increase, decrease very much here. For other extreme climates, the number of the hot day and cold night, hot day increase and cold night decrease. Here for 1 day maximum rainfall and 5 consecutive day maximum rainfall. It also you can show the reduce in the north of Vietnam or the increase in the south and south coast Vietnam. Here for storm and tropical cyclone and typhoon, it so that the change in the number of tropical cyclone and storm is not clearly, but the number of very strong typhoon increase. Very strong typhoon increase. And also have the typhoon track. Have a trip to the southwest for Ho Chi Minh City. Normally they hit Central and North Vietnam and escape from to Taiwan and Japan. And how will it change in future? Here the method we did we generate the climate change scenario for Vietnam. We use the RCP 8.5 and RCP 4.5 with we use 4 RCM model with approximately 20 km horizontal resolution. Its name is Brexit model from UK, CCAM from Australia, Rexiam from Italy, and Seawolf from US. This model and outputs we got to the collaboration between IMHAN and Cicero, BCCR Norway, and Met Office, and also from MI from Japan. Here for this 16 members without scaling with 4 model. For some GGM data driven, and we also apply the bias correction from before to ICU the projection, climate change projection for Vietnam. Also the as the past year sea level rise, but the limited time I didn't show here, and we also provide the uncertainty from the climate change scenario for public or for community. Here for very detailed list of RCM output for climate change scenario 2016 for Vietnam. We have totally 16 members, and we also use quantile mapping bias correction method. Here you can see this green this one for observation, blue green light simulation for present, and red eye for simulation future. It's raw simulation. We apply the quantile mapping method. We can get the yellow one. It means corrected climate change projection for Vietnam with the observation data from the past. And here some image for here unbiased or not biased correction for RCM. You can see a very range of the trend. For example, here this one black one the observed and other corresponding to other RCM model. And here for 7 climatic zone Vietnam. And here last one here for Vietnam. Here you can very see here CLWOP here underestimate. Here some other model prices Rexam here overestimate for from January to first half year, and the second one underestimate. Here after bias correction, you can after use the double gamma function, you can verify here for Vietnam. Now you can it's in one line here, and hopefully here for the similar to the rainfall, and you can see the unbiased, and here for bias for Vietnam you can see it seems to be very well captured in rainfall simulation for Vietnam. Hopefully this trend is correct in the future, and we apply for future. And here the projection for temperature into with 2 RCP 4.5 and 8.5. You can easily to recognize that for RCP 4.5 in the north of Vietnam is likely tend to increase 1.9 to 2.4 degree in south, a little bit smaller from the 1.7 to 1.9. But for extreme scenario, RCP 8.5 in the North Vietnam can exceed 3.5 to 4 degree Celsius, increasing in future. And in the south from 3.0 to 3.5 degree in future in the end of the 21st century in compared to the reference to 1986 to 2005 according to the IPC recommend. So here for rainfall, on small for in the future rainfall in Vietnam increase, but for dry season decrease. For number typhoon, will like of course the end of typhoon is mean it's go the typhoon it's of course the earlier and the last and the last. And here for the number of the strong typhoon will likely increase compared to the past. And here for other extreme, for example, summer monsoon that earlier and later rainfall monsoon increase, number of cold days decrease. And here for we also provide some uncertainty of mean temperature for community for user. It mean we not provide one number or one digit. We provide a range. For example, from here to here, from 2 to 6, maybe degree. It's depend on the scenario. Here for uncertainty for rainfall in the climate change scenario. I would like to move to remark. For annual temperature increase 0.62 degree for whole country. And rainfall decrease in the north and increase in the south in the past, and extreme temperature increase in the almost the climatic zone in Vietnam. Number of frequency of typhoon is changed not clear, but the number of strong typhoon increase very clear, and typhoon activity lasts longer. And in for future, very likely extreme regarding temperature tend to increase. Number of typhoon tend to increase. Mean sea level in coastal tend to increase. And how regarding the maximum one-day rainfall increase in the northwest and some part of Vietnam. Frequency of drought tend to increase, and its duration lasts longer than in the past. And that's all. Thank you for your listening.
Thank you. Okay, I think the climate change impact is very high influence to Taiwan and also to Vietnam. The last speaker of this morning's session, Dr. Linda Edison-Berry, she's from the Center of Disaster Studies in James Cook University in Queensland, Australia. She's also served as a co-chair in one of the working group of societal and economic research application in the WMO organization. So let's welcome Dr. Anderson Barry.
Good morning, and thank you very much for the invitation to come here today. I'm absolutely delighted to be here, and I thank Professor Benju very much for the invitation. And I especially thank the Taiwanese local committee, the local organising committee and staff who've made everything so easy, and the organisation's been just fantastic, and the support. Okay, I'm a social scientist, so a little bit different to most of the rest of you here. And my background is research. In my early career, it was research at James Cook University Centre for Disaster Studies. And for the last 15 years, I've been working with the Bureau of Meteorology in Australia. So I was in a disaster mitigation policy area in the Bureau, but my focus was very much in the weather services. And I'm now moving back into research and back to the Centre for Disaster Studies at James Cook University, so it's full circle. And I think my presentation today is focused mostly towards early career scientists and students to give an overview and a context and a social science perspective. Many of the researchers are working very hard in the physical sciences and focused on the hazard, but I've never ever met a researcher who has not had an end view or a motivation for the work that they're doing and the research that they're doing as having a benefit to the community or benefit to humanity in some way. So disaster managers, some of this information might be not new to you, but I'm hoping it'll be a useful overview for particularly for early career scientists. So I'm going to talk about effective end-to-end impact and risk-based warning systems within a total warning system framework. And I'm looking at this from the perspective of it being a very effective and primary mitigation strategy. So natural disasters, or natural hazards. Natural disasters are naturally occurring events. They are only disasters when they impact people or communities or the things that they value. Disaster is a social construct, and it's really defined by loss. And if loss is significant and overwhelming at any scale, then it can be a disaster. But a disaster isn't an inevitable consequence of a natural hazard event. And when risk associated with natural hazard events is known, understood, measured and assessed, then this risk may be managed and consequential loss may be mitigated. Now, mitigation strategies or interventions can be many. And you've seen this morning some very impressive engineering solutions for mitigation. What I'm going to focus on are societal interventions. So managing disaster risk is a high priority at a national level and an international level. And this has evolved since about the 1990s. Through the 1990s we had what was called the International Decade for Natural Disaster Reduction. At the beginning of the decade, there was a lot of focus and a lot of research looking at the hazards. Understanding volcanoes, understanding earthquakes, understanding cyclones. Through the decade, there became more and more interest in sociology, geography, and understanding the impact of hazards on communities. So we moved from at the turn of the century, from a hazard-on focus to looking at impact and risk, and there was a very strong motivation for mitigation. And mitigation was part of the Hyogo framework, who the disaster managers among you will be very familiar with, and mitigation was the priority. Since about 2015, the UNISDR has moved from mitigation into resilience through the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction, and pretty much this is focused on understanding risk, dealing with risk and building resilience. So we've moved from hazard to mitigation to building resilience over all of this time. This priority has been strengthened because it includes the Sustainable Development Goals, and that so that mainstreams disaster risk management into development. And at the Global Platform for Disaster Risk Reduction in Cancun last year, it was agreed and strengthened with the Multi-Hazard Early Warning System Conference. So there's a growing social science contribution into understanding risk and risk management. As was just mentioned, both Professor Dew and I have been part of a World Meteorological Organisation working group that's looked at the societal and economic research applications into weather services, into supporting mainly weather services, but as the community's broadened, it's broadened out a bit from that. The WMO has a high impact weather project which has 5 pillars that they're working on, looking at managing high impact weather now and in a changed climate context. And 2 of those pillars, looking at vulnerability, impact and risk, and communication, are social science driven task teams. So there's the physical sciences and the social sciences working hand in hand to understand hazards, understand risk and manage risk. Yes. So social science represents a range of skills. It's not just sociology, there's an economics there. You've got geography, psychology, political science, communications. It's broadening, it's a broad range of disciplines. So in terms of societal interventions and mitigation strategies, and you're looking at warning systems in an end-to-end context, this is another evolution. Warning systems have moved from hazard-based systems to impact and risk-based systems. So the hazard-based system focuses pretty much on what the weather will be, and that's your old weather forecasts, your old geophysical forecasts of what the hazard is going to be. And typically it's the information about the current and predicted status of the hazard and recommended defensive action. So it's a relationship between the hazard owners, geophysical agencies, weather agencies, and the emergency services. But generally that was the emergency managers who were response agencies rather than risk management agencies. It's moved towards a hazard-based warning systems, which is more about what the hazard will be. And this includes information about the current and predicted state of the climate, of the hazard, detail of the potential consequences and impact, and recommended defensive actions. And this occurs across all time periods. It's a very short term, medium term, seasonal, long term. Oh, random slide. Okay, so if you're looking at the total warning system as being a process that starts off with the science, it starts off with the best information that you can get, the research, the science, the contribution that all of your observation system and networks makes, right through to a defensive action being taken and loss being minimised because that action has actually been enabled. This is just taken from a paper that we published earlier this year in Australia, and it was looking at the warnings partnership. But it's to demonstrate that effective warning communication it mirrors effective risk communication. So the first stage is the science and research, and it's all your observational networks, and we've had good demonstration this morning about the growing effectiveness and the skill that's in the observational networks and what the science is giving us. So it's understanding the hazard. It's also understanding the physical and social landscape that the hazard will occur or impact. So it's, what's in the way of the hazard. And that's things like the physical infrastructure, critical infrastructure, land use, human settlements, the demographics, the population, the social capital, all that's sitting underneath where the hazard is going to impact. And part of the the science and research now is the development of really skilled risk management processes and risk assessment processes. So the current state of understanding, while it's changing, is still fairly much biased in favour of understanding the hazard. We're still putting a lot more effort into the science behind the hazard, but that's changing. So the communication is we're transferring all of this information in a meaningful way to anyone who needs to make a decision based on it. It's enabling the decision that's the critical point. Again, and I emphasise this because it occurs at all time scales. So you're looking at decisions, immediate decisions like move out of the way fast, to long-term decisions where you're looking at policymakers that will be making land use planning decisions and setting national and local policy. And it's critical to understand the needs and capacities of your community, whether it's your local community, it's your national government policy. So information messages, which are effectively warnings messages, should be transmitted in a multi-channel way in formal and informal networks. Very often we don't pay enough attention to the informal networks, and very often they're the networks that people are relying on and trust. I remember many years ago when Cyclone Zoe was impacting Tekopia in the Solomon Islands, and it was known that there'd been no radio transmission towers there for about 6 weeks, and it was a very isolated community. And there was no way of getting information between Honiara and these remote islands. Oh gosh, better go fast. And these remote islands. So the strategy that eventually worked was to get information through Radio New Zealand, and because a couple of people had shortwave radios, and then runners went around the island. So messages need to be understood, so you need to understand the language, terminologies that are familiar and understood and appropriate for various levels. You wouldn't use the same language for your emergency management community as you would use for a local community, for instance. They need to be believed, and they need to be trusted, personalised and action-enabled to give people... Action-enabled is where people will understand that they can take action and it will be affected. I want to go a bit fast because it's important to get to the next bit. And then action. You need to be able to... Action needs to be enabled. You need to have the plans in place, the infrastructure in place, the public awareness education in place for people to actually take action that will be meaningful. And you've only been successful in this if loss and suffering's been minimised and people and the things they value are out of the way. Now, while I was doing the research for this, I came across a paper, and I'm doing some work involving trust. I came across a paper that focuses on a Taiwanese case study. And the research question they were asked was why, despite prior experience, was they reluctant to adopt mitigation strategies. And they looked at a population of about 3,000 people, some of whom had been directly impacted by landslide and flood, some who hadn't. And they were looking at how to assess how people perceived natural hazards, whether what they believed about natural hazards, whether perceptions and belief make a difference in adopting mitigation strategies. And if you think of response to warnings as being a mitigation strategy, here, the impact of psychological variables and looking at perceived vulnerability, risk perception and social trust. And I think social trust and trust are pivotal and key, and they're probably one of the least understood elements and one of the most powerful elements driving how we respond to warnings messages. So in their key findings, the first one was in comparison with the general public, victims are less likely to adopt risk mitigation measures, even though they perceive larger impacts. They worry more about the hazard and they pay more attention to hazard information. They find out more information, they're looking for information, but their sense of being able to do something about it, about their personal situations, is not strong. So they're less likely to take actions and they feel powerless. So there are policy implications here for guiding, for shaping intervention and mitigation and warning strategies. The second finding was that social trust, and they looked at trust as being a combination of trusting government, experts and mass media, and risk perception, which is impact and control, and social economic status, which education and income, are positive predictors for mitigation intentions, whereas psychological vulnerability, the helplessness people feel, is a negative predictor. And powerlessness is positively associated with information seeking. So people will be looking for information but not really believing that they can do anything much about it. And the other finding was that psychological variables are stronger predictors for mitigation intentions than that of socioeconomic and demographic variables. So the perceptions and beliefs and attitudes outweigh demographic variables in mitigation and response to warnings. So one of the sentence I just pulled out of this, and I think one of the most powerful comments in that paper, is that they're finding that an effective intervention strategy may involve convincing people that there are indeed things they can do to effectively reduce risk. So I think the take-home message is you can have a lot of information, but you've got to find the point and the detail and the information about the community that you know and understand that will trigger them to willingly take action, because having the instructions, having the information is not enough. It's being able to use this information, and that's at all levels of society. That's governments being able to use the information that you have to enable policy, disaster managers to be able to enable effective planning strategies, and we've seen some of those today, and the community. I'm sorry I went over long. When I practiced it, it was exactly the right time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for Dr. Anderson Barry. I think we all learned a lot from the 4 presentations in this session. Talk about the ocean coastal zone changes by the climate change, talk about the weather forecast by the Central Bureau in Taiwan, and also the climate change scenario from Vietnam, and also the last one is about the risk vulnerability by human reactions and how we react to those kind of risk, the effect. So I think those are very, very good for presentation. Are there any questions for any of the presentation, any of the author? You're welcome to speak either in English or in Chinese languages. It will be fine. Any question for those 4 speakers? Or they're too great? I mean, no question at all. Yeah.
It's always a problem to convince people to move. Yeah. So I was struck by the presentation that the public is more, or the public will listen more than the victim themselves. But that's probably perhaps due to what you said is communication. So going to the total warning system, when will you transform, when can you transform the action, make sure there is action on the victims themselves so that less or zero casualty will occur? And I guess it's always I don't know the answer to that, because I had thought that when you become a victim yourself, that really triggers you to do action.
Yeah, I think Linda mentioned about the trust, so Linda can give some kind of comment.
Yeah, a couple of points I think is that now, as we're looking at impact and consequence, and the warnings community has extended beyond the partnership between the responders and the weather or geophysical agencies, the community and partnerships are much broader. You've got in your disaster management agency here, and if anyone hasn't looked at the YouTube or heard any presentation from the agency, I recommend you do, because they clearly describe how they're going through a lot of the processes of actually implementing all of the stages of really effectively understanding and communicating risk. I think within that community, within that broader community, you're working with the communities from the bottom up, and you're also providing information and partnerships at all levels from the top down, even in the middle. So you've got a much more trusting environment, and I think it's the willingness of people to understand, trust, and know that their actions are going to be useful, and minimise their own loss, that they have some sort of sense of control, that I think motivates people to work a bit more. And I think it also answers the question of your false alarm rate, which someone asked earlier. If you communicate the uncertainty, the source from which that message comes is trusted, I think the public at all levels is very forgiving of what we call false alarms. Sometimes in the emergency sector they call them practice runs.
Yeah, we have the drill, and also in Taiwan, also lots of the local village, they complain about the false alarm issues, but you have to accept this kind of practice, because it's still a kind of prediction. So yeah, it's very important issues. Are there any questions? Yes.
I have a question for Mr. Barking, from Yunnan. And I think in your presentation you mentioned that in the future that Yunnan will have more intense typhoon, and probably due to the global warming. But the question I have is, how about the rainfall? Because Yunnan is such a long, from north to south is about 1,050 kilometers long, right? How about the north and the central or the south part of the total country for rainfall part?
Can you move to my rainfall projection here for Vietnam? Please, Okay, no, please, regarding your question, according to our simulation, in the future, the mid-century or the end of 21st century, in Vietnam, rainfall is likely to increase for whole country. For in the north of Vietnam, can exert 20%, maybe in the south Vietnam, maybe about a little bit, slightly 10%. Yeah.
So what's the action or the countermeasure the government is going to take for this kind of projection? Any under planning?
Under planning, we also provide the uncertainty of the climate change projection, because sometimes we can project, we based on the assumption, maybe it's likely tend to increase 20%. Our government have a tool, it's called National Climate Change Action Plan for my country. National plan to adapt and mitigate to climate change in the future, near future, and middle future and far future. Far future only for warming, the middle future for plan, and the near future 2030 maybe our vision, our government vision.
Because since the climatology data show that the typhoon in Taiwan area seems to move much smooth, slower than the climate mean. You know, it's a move slower and getting stronger, and maybe we will have heavy rain. We have focus center director is over here.
Yeah.
So you know, I think we have to face that kind of challenges, because you know, this morning the deputy minister, he mentioned that with a real weak tropical depression, we get a severe flooded, you know, in the last August. Yeah, so.
Yeah, agree with you.
I think we can have more subject to discuss in the future. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's a very, very interesting topic. Yeah, any more question? Any more question to any of the speakers? I have one to the Central Bureau. I think how the Central Bureau collaborate with other agencies like Soil and Water Conservation Bureau, Water Resource Agency, regarding the sensors of the rainfall gauge. And also another question is possible for any kind of private industry or can join this kind of like weather sensors, like provide some kind of useful information to join as a member? Is that possible?
Sorry, I cannot reply this question precisely. I'm working on the weather forecast, not the observation section. Yeah, but I think all the there's a lot of agencies that have a rain gauge, for their purpose, and in Central Bureau would like to cooperate with them. But firstly, if they want to cooperate with CWB, and they have to do something, for example, they have to maintenance every maybe 4 times a year, and they have we have a number of we have some regularity for the observation, and currently there has a lot of the agencies, even the local government, they can share their information to Central Bureau, but on the other way, we can maybe have some label for that. For example, in CWB, we have a more precisely the rain gauge. Okay, we can have a label 1 or kinds of. For maybe some local government, they cannot maintain very well. We can get into the maybe label 2 or label 3. Okay, so I think they have a lot of opportunity to cooperate with them. Okay.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? If not, let's give out another big hand to those 4 speakers in this session. Okay, thanks for their excellent presentation. So I'll give time back. Yeah.
Let us thank Professor Zhou again. Okay, so the morning session ends here, and thank you for your participation. We'll have a lunch break until 1:30 p.m. So please come back in time. And everyone, please move to the hallway. Our staff will guide you to the dining hall. Thank you. Enjoy your lunchtime.